Welcome to Rooted and Ready from Annie's Project, where we share real conversations about risk, resilience, and the decisions shaping agriculture. I'm your host, Karisha Devlin. I'm a farmer and a training and curriculum officer with Annie's Project. In honor of National Ag Day, Women's History Month, and the International Year of the Woman Farmer, today's episode focuses on leadership and the women helping shape the future of agriculture. My guest is Doris Mold. Doris wears a lot of hats. She's the CEO of Annie's Project, president of Sunrise Agriculture Associates, a dairy farmer, ag economist, educator, and longtime advocate for women in agriculture. Doris has spent decades supporting farm families through consulting, leadership development, and research, while also helping elevate the visibility of women producers across the country. In this conversation, we talk about how women's leadership in agriculture has evolved, why recognition and representation matter, and what advice Doris has for the next generation of women leading in this industry. So let's get started. Doris, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Excited for this conversation.
I am too.
So, to start us off, can you tell listeners a little bit more about your background and how agriculture became central to your life and career?
All right. Well, I grew up on a farm. It was a dairy farm, and we raised all of our own crops. And when I was a lot younger, we had a beef cow calf operation as well, intertwined, and had some sheep and chickens. My brother and I had, we had a little egg laying entrepreneurship going on there. But from an early age, I knew I wanted to be a farmer. And at that age, I didn't realize quite the range of things that you could do in agriculture, but agriculture was an essential part of my life from the very beginning. And I grew up in 4-H and FFA and did probably my parents are super supportive, but I was involved in everything, probably much to their chagrin. I was curious and wanted to do anything and everything, and loved being active on the farm, loved being active in 4-H and FFA. And so it was natural for me to study agriculture. In college, I went to the University of Minnesota, and that really opened up my eyes even more because I realized that, you know, that I thought at first, that I had to kind of, keep focused on being a farmer or being this or being that. And it really opened my eyes to the range of agricultural opportunities, the things I could get involved in. I thought once I graduated from 4-H and FFA that that was kind of it as far as life was concerned, as far as organizational work. And I realized that there was a whole range of opportunities out there to be involved and continue to be involved. And I kind of joke that my life has just become kind of one giant 4-H project because I keep adding things. I'm not really good at subtracting. So when I initially left college, I went into corporate agriculture, came back and did my graduate work, thought I was going to be an academic. And was involved in academia and still am to a degree. I teach farm and agribusiness management still one day a week at the University of Minnesota, but I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a consultant, and now I'm a farmer as well, and of course a volunteer in agriculture and an ag advocate. So really, I've had this wonderful array of things that I've been involved in, and it really, all of those opportunities have provided me some tremendous insights into agriculture and the people in agriculture.
And that, in a nutshell, is why I'm so excited to have you on this episode because you have had such amazing opportunities. You've been able to give back to agriculture in a lot of different ways, and I know you have a lot of wisdom to share with our listeners today. So, March is a big month. It's Women's History Month. It's also on the ag side, the National Ag Week falls in March, National Ag Day falls in March, and this year also recognizes the International Year of the Woman Farmer. So, from your perspective, how have you seen the role of women in agriculture change over time?
Well, it's interesting because women have been involved in agriculture since agriculture was a thing. But I think for the majority of women that have been involved in agriculture in previous generations, they didn't have the real visible roles that you see now. I've seen this evolution of more and more women kind of stepping up and taking those more visible roles in agriculture. There's more women in colleges and universities. There's more involved in ag organizations. They're expanding into different avenues of agriculture as well. Not limiting themselves to, kind of when I was an undergrad, it seemed like a lot of the women that were in school at the time, they were looking at HR careers and communications
Mm,
careers in agriculture, and not so much of the science-based careers. I've really just seen an expansion of the range of things that they've been involved in. But, women in agriculture have always been there. Women farmers have always been there. They just have become more visible and more numerous as well, especially on the general ag side, the non-production ag side. We've seen just an explosion of women involved.
mhm. That's a great segue into our next question because you mentioned women being visible and the numbers. And you actually served on a national USDA panel that recommended new demographic questions for the Census of Agriculture, which ultimately led to a 27% increase in the number of women producers reported. So why was that change so significant?
Well, it was significant in a lot of ways. First of all, numbers matter. And if you're not counted, people don't realize that you're there.
Hmm.
And especially, when it comes to services and programs and ag policy, ag education. I mean, really anything and everything, even how maybe equipment manufacturers look at you, or garment providers for women in agriculture. Uh, a lot of times we haven't been counted, we've been invisible, and we've been there. And, it's so important to have our numbers counted. So that in and of itself was significant because I think people have now figured out, oh, there's a lot more women in production agriculture than we anticipated.
Hmm.
And some people kind of, were touting it as, wow, all of these women have come into production agriculture. We were always there. But oftentimes, society-wise and culture-wise, women didn't call themselves farmers. They'd say, "Oh, my husband is a farmer, or my son is a farmer." But women, by and large, over the centuries, have not been identified as farmers. So, it's really important for, you know, those people that are out there marketing to farmers that they understand that there are women out there and that women are included in their marketing messages, that uh, when you're designing things, equipment that people are using on farms, that you take into consideration women
Hmm.
farmers, the same way with clothing and other items, building things for women's bodies because our bodies are different, and it comes down to a safety reason as well. So,
Right.
and then of course, ag policies and just, ensuring that, women are represented in our agricultural organizations and in consideration for positions, even for considerations on positions like, the expert panel I served
Hmm.
on. It's just making sure that women have that representation because, when at least 36% of the producers out there are women, that's a significant number.
It is a significant number. And I wanted to back up to a comment that you made about women not considering themselves as farmers. And you and I have had the opportunity to know and work together for several years now. And one of the things that you challenged me on um, early in our working together is that I was a farmer too, and that was a term that even it took me a while to adopt, I guess, for myself because I worked off the farm, and even though I was involved and would help at harvest by running their tractor and grain cart, or maybe helping with record keeping, or maybe input and marketing decisions, that sort of thing, I just always felt like, no, my husband is the farmer, and I just help him when needed. And so, what advice, or how, I guess, share with our listeners what you said to me when you challenged me on that.
Well, I know that, and I don't remember our exact conversation, but you and many other women that I've talked to over the years, it's like, it's interesting that I think women in particular have imposter syndrome, and that's not just women farmers, but
Mm-hmm.
women doing anything because society doesn't expect you to be in this place. And society, imagery still is primarily if showing a farmer, it's going to be a guy and he's going to be dressed a certain way, and that's what a farmer is. And I think that has been so strong that we started to believe that. But it's we can all make different contributions, and it usually takes a team of people to have a successful farm, especially, as those farms get more complex or larger. There's a lot of people that are involved in that. And, driving a tractor in and of itself does not make you a farmer. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, helping with management decisions, being a part of those decisions, uh, keeping records, understanding where the finances are, making recommendations on how you should market, kind of your perspective on, what the markets are, what's happening in the markets, or where you're at financially, and can the cash flow handle certain expenses at this time, or are we going to need to go talk to the lender and preparing those financial statements? Those are all activities of a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to, and that's why the expansion of those questions that were asked in the census were so important, because we started to ask the right questions. We talked about, well, what do farmers do? And we went through the whole list, of which it included tractor driving and
Mm-hmm.
cropping decisions and stuff, but it really looked at the decision making. If you're involved in the decision making in that operation, in that farm, ranch, growing operation, then you're farming as well,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to have knowledge of what's going on to help make those important decisions. And you're not taking credit away from your husband, Karisha, if you say that you're a farmer. I mean, most farms have multiple farmers. And even
Correct.
if they don't claim them on the census, there's a lot of people
Others
involved in these
involved.
farming
Yes.
operations.
Yes, and it takes a lot of teamwork and involvement to keep them running successfully, no matter what type
Exactly.
of agriculture operation you have.
Exactly.
So we're going to switch gears into leadership. You're the CEO of Annie's Project, and you co-founded the Women's Agricultural Leadership Conference, which is a wonderful conference. I encourage anyone to go. You have to Google them. It's located in Minnesota. But how has your involvement with leadership events and your involvement with Annie's Project, how do those things support women in agriculture, particularly in the area of leadership?
Excellent question. Well, I think first of all, it provides a really important network for women that doesn't otherwise um, maybe naturally get developed in always in the field of agriculture. A lot of times when we go to meetings, we go to events that are general agriculture, um, they have been male dominated, and wonderful to have all those guys involved in agriculture. But sometimes I think we feel a little intimidated, like, we don't belong. Again, that imposter syndrome kind of
Mm-hmm.
stirs up. And, we have kind of a different way too of developing relationships with people and stuff. So, it's been an important way for women to develop those networks and to develop that support for each other. But I'd like to note that in both in both Annie's project and the Women's Ag Leadership Conference, even though we target women and that's been, our important target, we welcome anyone to participate in Annie's project and the Women's Ag Leadership Conference. And we do have men and other folks coming to the conference, and uh, they're usually pretty impressed. And it's like, wow, okay, this is a different way to develop networks and develop relationships, and a lot of people. And to develop knowledge as well, and they find that often they like how we present things and how we deliver things. But I think, in developing those networks and offering really good opportunities, excellent programming, really good education and knowledge, that it helps the people that participate develop more confidence, and they increase their involvement in agriculture. They increase their involvement in farming operations. If they're farming, they increase their involvement. Maybe if they have another ag career in that, it they increase their involvement in agricultural organizations and the community in general. I mean, it raises their confidence. It raises you know, they're feeling like, yes, I can do this, I can be a part of this, and that I have something valuable to share.
Hmm.
And that really helps the success of their farms and ranches and ag businesses that there were other ag businesses that they're working in. And it really helps their communities and their families because, if every member of that team is stronger and our communities are stronger, a rising tide lifts all ships.
Exactly. I think it's powerful too, just being around other women that is in the same industry as you are, that is probably facing the similar challenges that you face. And, for myself, whether it's through Annie's project, courses, or events, and I've had the opportunity to go to this leadership conference that you all put on in Minnesota, but just being inspired by the other women that are there and, leaving feeling like, wow, if they can do this, then I can too. I think that's really something there.
You know, and it's so important that we recognize that, because I get that feeling when I'm with a group of Annie's participants, when I go to this leadership conference, there is this electricity that's in the air, this buzz, this excitement. And
Yes.
and it lasts longer than the time that they're at the conference or in their Annie's project course or activity, because I get reports back in, and I'm sure you have too, of like, we have women that have started their own business, whether it's a farm or other kind of business. We have had women that have started their own peer group once they've gathered, and they continue to meet and have their own conversations and discussions and challenging each other to improve. And, in their businesses, but then also just supporting each other in kind of their leadership journey or their personal journeys. It's just really exciting and rewarding to hear that impact that those programs have had on people and what a difference it's made in their lives.
Absolutely. And one of the nice things, just in being at one of those events and getting to talk to other women, you get to hear about what they've overcame, what challenges. And again, it's that interacting with other people and sharing about, your life's journeys and experiences. So I want to ask you, what challenges have you faced as a woman in ag leadership and how have you navigated them?
Oh, wow. Well, there's I think we all have challenges, right? And I think this can be attributed to a lot of people, but I think um, some of the bigger challenges have been being underestimated or dismissed.
Hmm.
And that could be that, could have been that I was a woman, could be that I was young, could have been that I wasn't, whatever, fill in the blank, right? Whatever reason people wanted to give. And, you know, there were times that, I think that people didn't, and I had times when people said that they were looking for a man for the position,
Mm.
that they outright told me that. There have been other things too. There's some interesting things that happen in organizations that that I think are challenging sometimes. There's some toxicity that goes on in some organizations, and I'm not there for uh, denigrating people. I'm there to lift people up and do make positive change.
Mhm.
So, I guess in all of those situations, I try, really to be a positive force for change and to look to see where I could make change, and I showed up, and I didn't I think people figured out that I wasn't going to go away.
Mhm.
But showing people, demonstrating my worth, and that I'd hang in there and get the job done, and basically proving people wrong as far as um, your ability to lead things and do things. And I think it's important because I really worked hard on developing relationships and building my own networks and looking at where were there gaps, where were there things that weren't being addressed, and trying to help solve those problems or take up those opportunities to make positive change. And so, in the case of the Women's Ag Leadership Conference, for instance, there was a man by the name of Tom Kiher, and he did his PhD work on a leadership study of Minnesota ag leadership. And his big comment was that in all of the studying that he did and the interviews and looking at all of the organizations, that there was a tremendous gap with women's ag leadership, that they weren't being included, that there weren't things happening. And so after reading that study, and I think he did that study, I'm trying to remember what year he did it. I don't recall the year he did it, but I was part of a an organization that cut across all of agriculture in Minnesota, and I was on a leadership subcommittee of it. And I know there were a couple of us women on the committee, the rest were guys, and they were kind of like looking at each other like, well, what are we going to do with this study? And this colleague of mine and I looked at each other and said, well, we know what we're going to do. We're going to start this Women's Ag Leadership Conference, which we went out and did. And now we're in the 28th year. But we saw there was a problem, but we saw it as an opportunity to bring
Mhm.
women together from across agriculture and not just have it be a farm bureau or corn growers thing or this or that, but it brought women together from across agriculture, and we invited men to come in and have those conversations too, because that was important for
Mhm.
them to be part of that conversation. And lo and behold, the conference took hold and more women became involved and continued to be involved, and we've seen some. And I'm not saying that conference was why we saw the increased involvement, but it certainly helped.
Well, just creating those spaces for
Exactly.
women to come and to learn together. And it's one of the things I've always respected and admired about you, Doris, is you are a doer and you are tenacious, so you will get things done. I wanted to bring up an event that's coming up in a couple of weeks on March the 25th, actually. That's kind of a continuation of our podcast discussion that we're having today, and it's called Winding Roads: The Leadership Journeys of Women Farmers. And I wondered if you could tell our listeners a little bit about that webinar and how they could register for it and find out
Okay.
more information about it.
Sure. Uh, we've been having a webinar series because it's the International Year of the Woman Farmer, and we are focusing on those leadership journeys. So, three of us who hold national leadership positions in Annie's project, Karisha, who is our lovely podcast host, and Samuel Schweppe, who is our board president, and myself will be part of this conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit about our leadership journeys, but we're also going to be looking at a few years ago, we did a study of women's leadership and involvement in communities, agricultural and beyond, and we got wonderful response. And we're going to revisit some of those survey results as well to see kind of what is driving women's ag leadership. What has been, where are they involved, and what keeps them involved, and what are some of the barriers that they face. So I think it'll be a really interesting discussion to look at the three of us and then look at the broader community of women who responded to that survey.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I hope our listeners can join us. That webinar will be recorded. If listeners can't attend it live and want to go back and listen to it to see what it was all about, can you share where they could find that recording?
Sure. We have Annie's Project has a YouTube channel, so you can listen to the recording there. And if you are interested in signing up or checking out our programming, you can go to anniesproject.org, our website, and we have an International Year of the Woman Farmer page, and then we also have a program and events page. Plus, if you really want to sign up for a class, you can look for the courses that are currently on offer. On our website as well. And those vary throughout the year. So check it out on a regular basis because we update that on a regular basis. And you never know, there may be a class in your neighborhood.
So before we wrap up, one last question. What advice would you give to women who want to become more involved in leadership roles in agriculture?
All right. Well, there's lots of things that, you need to do some work. This for most of us, it just doesn't happen. Really looking at developing skills, finding mentors,
Mhm.
building relationships and connections, having those networks. Um, you need to be willing to put into the work and be prepared for some tough sledding from time to time. It's not always an easy journey, but it can be oh such a rewarding journey. And for those of you that are in leadership already, I'm going to challenge you um, to make sure that you're helping out others, that you are mentoring, and that you're creating opportunities. And that if you're wondering, well, why am I having such a tough time getting people to serve on this committee? Or why is this not happening? We need more people involved in leadership roles and whatever your organization is. Take a look at how you're doing things and go out and invite people to be part of what you're doing. People don't always respond to those general calls for, hey, we need leaders. Look at people in your community and take some chances on working with some people that, maybe are beginners, but they need an opportunity to get that experience, and they're going to need some guidance and some help. As I look at agriculture being a resource-based industry, you know, if you have 1,000 acres of wonderfully fertile land, you're not going to let 500 of it sit idle and not
Mhm.
do anything with it. And in essence, when we're not inviting women or new and beginning producers, younger producers, XYZ producers, if we're not inviting those that aren't currently in leadership positions to become involved, we're really denying ourselves the potential of utilizing all the resources that we could. And I just think we have so many opportunities in agriculture, and we have so many problems to solve. And we need everybody to be at the table and helping us take advantage of those opportunities and solving those problems because, let's face it, we have an ever increasing and hungry world.
Hmm.
The population is growing. We have more mouths to feed. There are people that are underfed. Let's get together and see where we can solve these problems and grow these opportunities together.
Yes, it takes all of us. Well, thank you so much, Doris, for your time today. Really enjoyed this conversation and look forward to continuing it at the March 25th webinar.
Thank you, Karisha. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you, listener, for being here with Rooted and Ready from Annie's Project. This month, we celebrate the women whose leadership continues to shape agriculture in every corner of the industry. If you enjoyed this conversation with Doris Mold, share this episode with a friend or colleague in agriculture. Together, we're building stronger farms, businesses, and communities. Until next time, stay rooted and ready.